David Lynch was one of the most authentic and powerful artists of his generation, and in my opinion, one of the greatest filmmakers of all time. His impact is hard to understate. He, in many ways, was the weirdest mainstream cinema ever got. He was the only true avant-garde filmmaker around whom clubs form every year at film schools across the country. He was a visionary and an inspiration, and I'm here today to do a ranking of his wonderful feature films. I will not be including anything Twin Peaks related, including Fire Walk With Me, because I want to do a separate video on. If I were to rank it, I would probably put it in the top 5. It's amazing. At the bottom of the list, coming in at number 9, I've got Dune. I think it's pretty well understood at this point among the fans and among movie fans in general that this is his worst film. Is it his fault? Probably not. There was a lot of studio interference around the whole production. It led to Lynch basically disowning the film after its completion. I think everything that needs to be said about it has already been said more eloquently than I could. The sloppy expository dialogue, the huge exposition dumps, the plot that still manages to be kind of unfollowable. I think that's enough to move on. At second to bottom, I've got Inland Empire. This is funny because I feel like you only really love this movie or you hate this movie, but I kind of land somewhere in between. I think it has its moments. I think it's maybe his most viscerally unsettling movie. I like what it represents in the context of Lynch's career, how it's kind of the final furtherization of the surrealism he had been gradually building up his entire career. But man, does it just drag on. Great scenes and a really interesting pair with Mulholland Drive, but it just really needed an editor. 3 hours is too much for this movie. Maybe the only true problem in a David Lynch production that you can't blame on anyone besides the man himself. Moving on, at this point I would say every single movie I'm going to talk about I love. It got very difficult for me at this point to distinguish between all the movies because I think they're all fantastic. One is only better or worse than the one before or after it by a very small margin. With that out of the way, at number 7, I have The Elephant Man. I think this is both one of the strongest scripts Lynch ever put out and one of the least ostensibly Lynchian films he ever made. It's beautiful and heartbreaking and harrowing. At moments, perhaps a wee bit sentimental, but ultimately I think it earns that. The performances are brilliant, the score, the biting lines of dialogue that just stick through the screen to poke you in the heart. The whole thing is very epic and sweeping, but at the same time, very intimate. A fabulous film. Just one that ranks a little lower in his discography because of its relative conventionalism. At 6, I've got Eraserhead. It's Lynch at his most raw and creative and youthful. Truly bizarre, but brimming with personality. It's a miracle it ever made money, but I'm glad it did. It brought us one of the greatest artists of the 20th and 21st centuries. It's the first time Lynch ever worked with Jack Nance, which is a creative collaboration that would last for a very long time. I love the reliance on background noise and these industrial sounds and scores to really immerse you in this bleak and dark setting. I love the relentlessly creative props and scenes that just stick in your mind. Makes so much out of so little. There's very little I can say that hasn't been said a million times before, but I will repeat what so many have said and declare that it is an excellent movie. We've hit the top 5. At number 5, I have Mulholland Drive. Might seem a little low to some people. I know a lot of Lynch fans would probably have this at number 1. I will admit that something about it has never quite hit me the way others of his have, but that doesn't stop me from admitting it's basically a perfect movie. Its use of dream logic was totally game-changing, launched Naomi Watts into stardom. The main mystery and subsequent reveal of what's really happening behind the mystery is obviously extraordinary. But what's always been key to me about the film is these little scenes Lynch throws in there that totally make the picture. They relate to the main story just a little or really not at all. The scene where the guy shoots the vacuum, the man behind the Winkies dumpster, Billy Ray Cyrus, and the cowboy. It's so odd and so great, and it overall can come off a little slapdash at first, but I think once you sort of dive deeper into its layers, you'll find all of these little things are cut from the same cloth. At 4, I've got Wild at Heart. Lynch's most violent and gruesome film, but also one of his most fun. Jumping from Blue Velvet to this for Laura Dern was just an incredible showcase of her range. Harry Dean Stanton's little performance is one of the most heartbreaking and memorable in the whole movie. The scenes at night when they're just driving and that great little pedal steel song's playing, basically like cinematic sex. Lynch's eye is creative vision, and control is just at its absolute peak here. A brilliant movie. At 3, I've got The Straight Story. This is another one that I think goes a little overlooked in Lynch's filmography. Another one where Harry Dean Stanton just gives a little performance that is one of, if not the most memorable things about the whole movie. You'd think because it's such a quiet script and such a quiet movie that, similar to The Elephant Man, you wouldn't be able to pick up on the fact it's made by David Lynch. But to a finely tuned ear and eye, some of the scenes are just quintessential David Lynch, even though it's the only of his films for which he did not write the script. The scene where Sissy Spacek's buying all that milk and talking to the cashier, the scene with the deer lady and subsequently Richard Farnsworth sitting amongst all the deer eating the roadkill, that shit's just got David Lynch written all over it. Really beautiful, quiet movie with an amazing lead performance. His most score-reliant movie, perhaps, but I think the way he uses it is really intelligent, kind of to show the passage of time and this passage of this journey. The scene in the diner with the old guy drinking beer is one of my favorite moments in Lynch's entire career. Amazing movie, and one that really more people should watch. At 2, I've got Lost Highway. This was the first David Lynch movie I ever saw, and it just blew me away. One of his most unfollowable plots, but that's also kind of what makes it so cool and unique in his filmography. Built out of these scenes. Each scene is just like its own little movie, little amazing, brilliant little movie. Starts with a very simple, straightforward, creepy premise and jumps straight into surreal unease with the scene with the makeup man at the party, which again, that's a contender for my favorite moment in Lynch's career. And then it just continues to spiral out of control and get increasingly more batshit. Simultaneously, one of the saddest stories he ever did and one of his most badass movies. I don't really want to give anything away because it's such an important watch, I feel like. But yeah, this thing lands so high on my list for a reason. My number one David Lynch film of all time is none other than Blue Velvet. It's the one I've rewatched the most, the one I quote the most, the one I have the most fond memories with. One of, if not the most quotable movies in film history. Lynch's surrealistic tendencies were sort of in a fledgling state at this point, but I think as a result we get some of its purest moments, like the scene of Laura Dern just materializing out of the darkness, just fucking materializing on this sidewalk. It's one of the most beautiful shots in film history. It uses a brilliant, simple plot to spiral out of control and take you on this absurd, engaging, extraordinary journey. Ends with one of my favorite scenes in any movie ever. Not for really a reason you'd expect given the prior hour 50. So yeah, that's about all I got. David Lynch, rest in peace. Deuces.